Design Leader Insights is brought to you by Fuego UX, a UX research, strategy, and design consultancy. Hey, Kevin, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Great, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no doubt. And as we get started, can you give the audience a little bit of context in into your journey in UX design?
Yeah, so I'm currently the Global UX Director for Glovo. It's a 90-person team of designers, researchers, content designers, and localization specialists. I've been here for the last almost 2 years. This is my 18th year in tech. Started out as a front-end developer for 3 years, then worked as a UI designer, UI, UX, HCI, all the fun old names. Worked my way up into management, crossed over into kind of like pure product design, worked my way through Capital One, PwC, Booking.com, and then found my way to Spain 2 years ago.
Tell me about the company you work at. I think, it maybe has a presence in the US, maybe not, but I know it's global. I want to learn about how are you designing for like all these different cultures across Europe and the other markets you're in? I think that can be tough for designers to kind of wrap their heads around.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so we're in 25 different countries. We merged with a parent company called Delivery Hero. So combined, we are 75 countries. So
Wow.
we are the third biggest delivery company globally. So we compete directly with DoorDash, Uber Eats, and all of their European and Asian markets. We compete with, FedEx, DHL in some cases because of the courier, and then the same day logistics services we provide in some countries. And they manage a 90-person team out of a 5,000-person company.
And like, how are you designing for the nuance of food ordering in delivery versus Spain versus the UK, and like, what are how are you researching the differences of what those consumers want and expect, I guess?
Yeah, certainly. I think things really changed during the pandemic. I mean, the industry of food, grocery delivery spiked. I mean, it's the best year for this industry in a long time. And then it kind of has come back down to normal levels, but people have had, those habits formed. So they're still pretty loyal to their products. The real difference, as you mentioned, is like cultural. So, Spain eats dinner super late at like 9, 10 p.m. And Morocco, we close for, pretty much the whole day during the observation of Ramadan. So we really need to be very specific to the country, to the holidays, to the traditions, the travel habits even.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of interesting data and insights there. How do you kind of manage your team to think about that, like the data side of it?
Yeah, so our research team is very data centric. Given that we can't really do a one size fits all, there's too many differences in our markets. Like we go as far west as Portugal and Nigeria, as far east as Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. So the things just don't apply. So the research teams go on a lot of physical trips. We rely
Okay.
very heavily on our customer service team, our frontline workers, our sales teams, our account managers, and then we have really good product analytics.
Yeah, and then let's talk about collaborating with other teams of the company. So you have a 90-person design team. I imagine that there's an even bigger product and dev teams. How are you all staying on the same page?
Yeah, I mean, there's like something like 400 plus engineers. We have a pretty normal agile structure. So the designers are, for the most part, embedded on one, maybe two teams. Research is, as of February, when we did a small downsizing, they are centralized now. So the research functionality is a direct, let's say, service to product leadership. So we try to kind of determine what should be in the roadmap, determine priorities, help them determine OKR prioritization, ranking, whereas designers are like the direct kind of relationship with the engineers, and therefore the collaboration is super, super, super tight. We have to do lots of QA ourselves. We're kind of unique. We don't have a QA team, so the designers are the front line of quality assurance.
Cool. And then what about like developing that product roadmap? Is that something that you all have input on and insight into?
Yeah, I would say the product roadmap is probably the most challenging place to make impact, right? It's not so much a fight over what should be on the roadmap. It's about, hey, we have an insight or a learning, so this should be done differently or redone, or this should come up in priority. I think those are the arguments that happen the most, is trying to react to new information and then make changes to what has been the plan for the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. So you mentioned a research team that actually has to go to all these countries, finding all these insights. How are you making sure, those insights get turned into usable designs?
Yeah, I think a lot of my peers have been having this challenge, especially since UX got hit pretty hard during the tech layoffs in February.
Right.
So we've all been like shifting our teams and changing ways of working and new processes. This has been the hardest one to pull off. I mean, we've been looking at and did successfully navigate getting new contracts for new software so that there's a bit of autonomy and a bit more speed to collecting participant information, synthesizing using AI, things like that. That's great. But actually physically getting firsthand experience to get the voice of the customer, the voice of the user into the product process has been a challenge.
How are you measuring the ROI of all of this? Like not only the research, but the end-to-end design process?
What we've pushed for is to have very clear UX KPIs. The most important one that matters to the business that we're trying to get product to make a North Star KPI and an OKR for the whole company is effort or friction scoring. So certain companies call it QX score, or they can use SUS, depending on whatever their platform is. But we're mostly mobile. But we are so unique per country that you can't really just do like a score for a flow and call it a day, because the flow adapts to the legal changes of the country and the language and so many different things. And we have a huge need to automate this kind of testing, So we're working with AWS to see if we can get automated testing using local parameters. So we can, run the test, run a QA test in Spain, run a QA test in Poland, run a QA test in Nigeria. And then we're trying to get software that can detect friction, confusion, lostness, certain increases in the flow.
Kevin, let's switch gears here a little bit. You have a ton of advice to impart. A lot of new designers entering the field today. So I'd love to hear what you'd like to tell them.
Yeah, certainly. So I was a professor for 5 years. I worked at boot camps, and I mean, you see there's a huge influx of new designers, new researchers. UX is a growing industry, but at the same time, there's not enough jobs for other roles, all the positions that we see coming out. So I want to talk about what it takes to get a job, but also what it takes to keep a job and be happy. I mentor managers of managers at this point. So there's a lot of people on my team who are in management, but for ICs, there's a very large distinction from when I was an IC to now, which is companies have 2 tracks. You can decide to be an IC, an individual contributor for your entire career. And you go into a staff, a principal. Google has this distinguished level above principal. And you can be an IC all the way up to like almost the executive level without managing people. And that's something people need to think about earlier in their careers, because before, when I was around, that wasn't even an option. It wasn't even a choice. Upward movement meant management, and I happen to like management. Like I happen to like mentoring and teaching and coaching and staying fresh on new software. I still do work in Figma, so I don't feel like I've lost, being hands-on. But some people really don't like management, and I think that it's a very valuable option to go to small or big companies now, and I want to.
And what about like the data side? How can it's like you're in an extremely technical company. And I'm sure you expect your designers to understand the insights coming from the app. How should designers approach that and learn that?
So I have a very funny career path, because I've hopped probably on average every 2 years, 2.5 years. And so my biggest thing, and I think it helps for even if you're not a career hopper, is to really learn the industry your company operates in. It isn't so much to learn how the engineering or how the code works, which is always a debate whether designers should code. I think designers should understand the product they work on, not necessarily how to replace engineers. But I think designers should also, whether you're a designer or a researcher, a strategist, really understand why the industry works a certain way, why certain business models work, why certain companies fail in the space, because that's like indestructible knowledge that will help you whenever you go to your next job or have a new challenge
Yeah.
or want to transfer within the company. Yeah, I think everyone should get a mentor. Like a big shout out to the ADP list people, because like I think it's the most accessible mentorship it's ever been for UX and design. So I recommend everyone try it.
Are you on there? Can people find you on there?
Yes, you can find me on there. My schedule is a little limited, but I do take about 2 mentors a quarter.
Well, Kevin, thanks so much for sharing these insights today and coming on the show.
Yeah, I love it.